My name is Tyler David, and you're watching Field of Dreams on ACTN.
Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of Field of Dreams on ACTN. I'm Steve David and I'm your host. Today I want to talk about a review of the presidential election, Ttfa presidential election that's supposed to take place sometime in the latter part of November. Let me introduce my panel and then we would get into the details. Right here, immediately to my left is Alvin Henderson. Welcome to the set, Alvin.
Always a pleasure to be here.
And next to Alvin is Larry Joseph. Welcome to the set, Larry.
Again, thanks very much for the invite, Steve.
And our stranger, a stranger to the panel, Jefferson George. You haven't been there for so long. Welcome to the set, Jeff.
Thanks for having me, Steve. Pleasure to be here as well.
Tell the viewers where you've been, bud.
All over.
Hope the vacation was good.
Which was a vacation.
Right. Hey, so let's set up, because viewers is a panoramic view, because we don't know, we don't have details on what's going to happen, and we haven't heard anybody's manifesto, and we don't know much about it. We just like you, what we read, what we heard, but we're going to try to give you an idea of what to expect, if we can do that. So I'm going to ask Alvin, because Alvin is good at setting up this whole scenario with who is running and the breakdown and all of that kind of stuff.
Well, I'll leave the who is running to Jeff and Larry. What I will do is say what the Constitution says as to who is eligible to vote, because that's very important. Now, I'll give you a little history. In the past, many moons ago, it was one club, one vote.
Yeah.
And we had over 100 clubs at one time in Trinidad and Tobago. And each club had a vote. And who could marshal forces by getting the clubs behind them had a great chance of getting into a lot of votes for to become president. But now it's a voting by delegates. And the general meeting for the AGM for voting, it's 47 delegates that are eligible to vote. And the breakdown is as follows. And I'll read here because I don't want to make any mistakes. It's very important. The TT Pro League clubs, 10 delegates. The TT Super League clubs, 8 delegates. And you notice I specifically said clubs here. Yeah. Clubs. The clubs are eligible to vote, not the leagues themselves. For the regional association, you get 3 delegates each. And so the regional associations are Central 3, Eastern 3, Eastern Counties 3, Northern FA 3, Southern FA 3, and Tobago 3. So I think that's 6 regions.
Yeah.
So that's 18 votes. The Women's Association has 2 delegates. The Trinidad and Tobago Referees Association has 2 delegates. The Futsal Association has 2 delegates. Primary school has 1. Secondary Schools Football League has 1. The Trinidad and Tobago Youth Soccer Association has 1 delegate. The Trinidad and Tobago Beach Soccer Association has 1 delegate. And the Veterans Football Foundation of Trinidad and Tobago has 1 delegate. And I'd like to also read something here. It says, each delegate shall have 1 vote in the general meeting. Only the delegates present are entitled to vote. So no voting by proxy or letters.
That's important.
And that's important. So your delegates must be present in the meeting to vote.
Can't
One
send
question on
me-
delegates. Delegates, you see, like Super League has 8 delegates,
Mhm.
Yeah.
but Super League have many clubs.
The delegates
give me
of the
that.
Super League will be elected among the members of the Super League Premiership Division on an annual basis, and the Super League has their AGM this weekend.
Right. So each club wouldn't have a vote. Maybe within themselves they would have a vote. How they pick the delegates? Have you any idea?
Well, they will have they will go to the Super League, and then they will have a consensus about which slate we should be voting for, X, Y, Z, and then they will decide which clubs will represent them as the voting delegates.
So they have a vote within the vote,
Yes.
kind of, with
Yeah.
themselves.
Now, the same should also apply to the regions,
Regional.
because a regional executive, who usually casts the vote, should represent the views of the
Of the
clubs
clubs.
in the region.
Yeah.
That doesn't always happen.
No.
All right?
Right.
And a number, like for instance, the southern region has their AGM, I think, next week,
7.
the 7th. And it's important then for the clubs in that AGM to state who they want their executive
zone
to vote
to
for.
vote for.
But so it's only the Pro League really one club, one vote. Everybody else has.
Everybody else is under the delegate system.
All right. Okay. Now we have that in place. Let's talk about the
slates.
delegates themselves.
The slate.
The slate.
And I
yes.
think Larry and Jeff are up to date on the people who are going forward in
Well,
the
has
slate.
been publicly stated by the interested people to run. Well, of course, the incumbent, John Williams, is there, and he has some opposition from 2 people so far. William Wallace from the Secondary Schools Football League, who I think represents a block of people who went public a couple of weeks ago. We discussed that on this show, right? Also, we saw recently that Mr. Ferguson, who is the sponsor of the Ascension League, has thrown his hat into the race to run for president. So right now, publicly that is, I'm not too sure when nomination ceases. The doc, maybe you might be able, but publicly so far, we are aware that those are the 3 people that will be running for the post of president of the Ttfa.
Yeah, as far as I know, nominations have closed.
Close the
Nomination has
nomination.
closed. So then there can't be any new people after those 2.
So it's only 3 that we have.
3.
And you can drop out, but no newcomers
Having
coming.
said so, I can't remember in recent history there having been 3 contenders for the position. I remember I was part of the SFA when Mr. Timke was going to run, and he just had Colin Murray was somebody who also threw his hat into the thing, but Colin Murray eventually pulled out a couple of weeks before the eventual vote, and Timke went unopposed. So in my short memory, I can't remember having 3 candidates vying for the top position. I can be corrected of.
There was a guy from Central last year who got a couple votes. He was on this show as well. What's his name? Taylor. He's not running.
He's running as he's on the
under
United
the
slate.
slate with the United people under
Oh.
Wallace.
And he's running as a first vice president.
With Wallace.
Yes.
Right. Okay.
So Clint Taylor, he's running as a
Yeah.
first vice president. He is the secretary of the Central Zone. That's his present position.
But Larry, you said you can't remember many people running, but last year they had him. They had Selby Brown. They had John Williams. They had Timke. So they had
Timke wasn't there the last time.
last election.
You sure?
Yeah.
No,
Against John Williams.
no, but he wasn't. Was he?
Yeah.
Yes.
Last election.
Against John
Raymond
Williams,
Dimke?
yes.
Raymond Dimke?
Yeah.
They had a runoff. They had
Against John Williams, he was there.
yeah,
Okay.
so they had
Okay.
And Ramdan.
right.
Ramdan.
Oh.
Ramesh Ramdan.
Right. So they got quite a few. Jefferson.
Yeah, if we have to look at the I think the prospective candidates who would be running against the incumbent, for me, Ferguson is a bit of unknown in terms of what to expect. Right? I mean, he has been, thrust into the limelight in the local football fraternity as a savior of sorts, where he came in to sponsor both the first tier and second tier Ascension leagues, which served as a sort of an off-season league prior to the start of the Pro League and Super League, respectively. So there's not much to really go on other than, so far, let's say, his generosity to the local football. William Wallace, however, I think we have much more information in the public space to sort of have a view as to what his leadership will look like. Somebody who was probably more popular in the cricket arena before he entered into football as at the management or administrative level with the Ttfa. As well, he's somebody who, going into the election, seems to have the confidence of a lot of seasoned football administrators, right? A lot of bigwigs, so to speak, right? And I think he does have that leadership qualities. Working with him when he was the manager of the men's senior team, and I think from that aspect we can see that he's somebody who would be able to lead. My take on it is football is not going to be saved by any one person, and as we mentioned before on previous shows, I think what that particular slate offers is somewhat of a willingness to have a collective approach to solve some of the problems that we have. And as long as I think that he can work together, bring their qualities to bear on the football scene, I think that he should develop into a good candidate to challenge the incumbent.
Is any one of you guys know who is on the different slate? Let's say under David John Williams slate. Who are these people? Do you guys know who these people are?
Yeah, well, there are names there's one name that I don't know, and that's Mr. Tom. I don't know who he is. I think he's a lawyer, and he's gone up for first vice president on John Williams' slate. Let me just say that the thing that surprised me about John Williams' slate was that when he went up the last time, we know that two of the vice presidents who went with him have since left, and they have since left quite a long while ago. But Mr. Ewing Davis was still there as our first vice president, and I was a little surprised that he was totally omitted from the slate on this occasion, because he was the only vice president who was still remaining. And instead, the new vice presidents, Tom is one, Selby Brown,
Who was a candidate?
who was a candidate in the last election and vigorously opposed John Williams on many issues, is now there. And then from Tobago, there's Wayne Moore from Tobago, who is also listed as a third vice president. So that is the slate for John Williams. The person who I don't know personally and never met, I don't know if I met him, but I've never interacted with him, is Mr. Tom. I don't know who he is. I don't know if any of you have.
No, that's a new name for me.
Yeah.
That's a new name.
Right. On
Wallace?
on Wallace's side, Wallace is going with people who I think we are all very familiar with. He has done something that I think is good. Well, first of all, his first vice president is Clint Taylor, who is really a central
Right.
administrator and is also associated with the
The
referees.
referees, yeah.
Right.
So the referees group is kind of involved there, and he also has as his second vice president the president of Wolf, Miss Warwick.
Right.
All right. Now, if you're going to be all inclusive and all encompassing, I felt if I am going to be with a slate, a woman on a slate to me is a plus.
Yeah.
Especially where we are responsible for women's football in Trinidad and Tobago, and this is 2019. And I was surprised that the two other slates did not have a female on their slate. I was really surprised because a female, to me, would give you a little more impetus, especially as John Williams has not found a lot of favor over the last 4 years with the women's program. Even though he's done a lot for the women's program, somehow it doesn't seem that it
It's registered.
it has registered. He has done a lot for the women's program. If you go and look at the individual
Yeah.
things that he's done,
Yeah, he's
but he hasn't found favor with them for some reason. And the other person is
Ferguson.
No, in this.
Okay.
in the Wallace United is a former footballer, former manager of the national football team, former manager of Jack Warner's club. Missing the name right now.
Who?
Not,
I don't even know who is that on that slate.
I'll
Wallace?
No,
Wallace
I'll
slate?
tell you his name in a minute. Name just flew out of my head.
All right. And Ferguson. What about Ferguson's slate? You know who's
Ferguson's slate he has on his slate Colin Patap from the Central Zone.
The Go Sign guy.
And Colin Patap is as a present board member.
Mm-hmm.
And he also has a Go Sign.
Okay.
How about
All right.
Eddie? Eddie's on his slate?
And Eddie Dean.
Yes.
Eddie Dean as the first vice president.
All right. Also, I'm not going to ask you guys who's going to win this because I'm going to put you on the spot yet. Maybe at the end of the show, we probably will. But let's try to talk about strengths and weaknesses of some of these contestants. Not contestants, well, runners. So, I mean, and again, it's a panoramic view of what we want to do. Okay, let me let you guys think about it. And when you thought about it, we will come back after this short break and we will discuss it. We'll be right back.
I think that will again be the case, and he's made the argument to sort of galvanize his presidency with his marquee project, the Home of Football, which is
We, from those encounters together, and this was a North-South game to open the season.
So the team might be playing well, as we always say with Trinidad and Tobago.
Futsal did that great for me.
Okay, hey everybody. Welcome to another edition of Field of Dreams on ACTN. My name is Steve David. I'm your host. Okay, welcome back, viewers. Hey, but we were just saying, we were just discussing, Alvin and I could afford to forget a little bit, but Jefferson and Larry, you guys shouldn't be going down that road.
Maybe,
I guess it's rubbing off a little bit.
maybe you're spending too much time with Ole.
But I'm sure Alvin remember already. Who's that guy, Alvin?
We had so many clues. Ex-national footballer, ex-national captain, defense force player. And sometimes these things run from your mind at this age. But it was one of the younger fellas brought it up. I must say, Jefferson George remembered that it was Sam Phillip. It was Sam Phillip, and Sam Phillip, a very popular person, well known throughout the football community, and somebody nice managerial qualities, somebody good to have on your slate.
Okay, I told you guys when we come back, we're going to talk about strengths and weaknesses and how do we view it. Let's set up this nice. Let's talk about DJ Jabi first, David John Williams.
Yeah.
And what do you think? How you felt that he has performed, and if you don't want to go down that road, what you think is his strengths and his weaknesses? Because he does have strengths and he does have weaknesses. The thing. So
I'll start off by saying that, I will put my hand first up to say that I'm one of the persons who supported John Williams' entry into the Ttfa administration and whatnot, because he's somebody who really has a passion for the game. He loves the game. He is a good administrator, or at least he had shown us to be a good administrator with his own club. Where I think John Williams, and I'm not alone, and I see recently Shabazz in his interview on television supported the notion is John Williams, I think, came from a situation where he was allowed to be autocratic in his own club, where he's the boss, into a more democratic organization, which people do not realize how much the Ttfa is a democratic organization. Because in the past, we had a maximum leader. That maximum leader was not always the president. That maximum leader, for a large part in time, was Mr. Jack Warner, who functioned as the secretary.
Yeah.
And we had presidents who people probably can't name or didn't even know they were president.
Shadowed by Jack.
But they functioned over the great shadow that Jack Warner cast. And John Williams was for the first time in a long while acting as an autocratic leader and trying to get things done quickly in an organization that usually it takes time for things to be done. When the home of football was to be started, he got it started right away. But in doing so, you leave out other people from the decision-making process, and that is where you can get into trouble. And as a result of that, many of the committees that are are supposed to function in the Ttfa over time, so that you can get views from a wide range of people, that's where those committees fell apart, even though they were initially started. And that's where the whole democratic process in the Ttfa fell apart under John Williams.
Synonymous to Donald Trump in it.
Well, I wouldn't quite go that far because we're talking about football.
All right, so
that fella lives in Trumpland, You could show that reference.
What Larry and
Joe, for me, I can't add much to how the doc broke down John Williams's personality as the president of the Ttfa. I think it is well documented. It's my own personal feeling also that is where he has rubbed people the wrong way in his autocratic approach to doing business from the Ttfa. He has advanced some reasons as to why, or some of his supporters have advanced some reason why he has to do it that way. Because some of the people on the board maybe wasn't in total agreement some of the plans and projections that he had. But as the doc said, again, because he came from a background where he was accustomed in making the decisions, and the decisions were final, at I believe firmly that that may not be the best approach when you inherit or you come upon the president of the Ttfa. So I think that's where he started to have a lot of problems. Because regardless of what, if I am a board member in an organization and when we come to a meeting, I basically have no say, or my suggestions are just brushed under the table, and whatever I say goes, which it appears from the public to what happens, because you've had so many public outbursts from a lot of the other board members as to the fact that they feel as non-entities in this group. So I agree with it in terms of his autocratic approach. And unfortunately for him, I think it has coincided with the absolute atrocious results of the representative teams that the organization represents. So the average person and the average viewer and the average supporter usually judges administration in the sporting discipline by the results.
Right.
And because the results have not gone in his favor in the last couple of years, it just exacerbates some of the fact of the leadership style that has rubbed people the wrong way. So people kind of lump everything into one now and come away with the conclusion, John Williams, you see John Williams, based mainly, I suppose, in the poor results, might be 60% of that perception, and his autocratic.
And maybe it could be, and I mean, I'm making excuses for him. Let's say I'm making an excuse for him. Maybe he doesn't have that strong secretary personnel like Jack Warner, the type who is going to take charge, because really the secretary runs the whole show, right?
Mhm.
So maybe he didn't have that. So he had to exert his personality on that way.
Just allow me a couple seconds again, Jeff. I heard him on a show. I think I was on my phone. Somebody was interviewing him, and it's not that John Williams doesn't have tremendous plans for football.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, including the home of football, because as the doc said, he's a passionate. He comes out of a sport in history. Besides football, he used to play cricket very well before. But he's a sports person true and true. So out of that history, some of his plans that he has earmarked, some have come to fruition, are really good plans. It's just that his way of dispensing these plans and projection to the board members and then filter down maybe to the zones and then maybe to the public itself, a lot of times comes across as very autocratic, no transparency in some of them. And I think that is where it has fallen from him. So at the end, what he's depending on is the end product of his plan. So for instance, the home of football, it's public knowledge as to some of the problems that people were having, the lack of transparency in terms of the funds and whatever. But he is thinking, okay, look at the final thing and then judge me.
Right.
So he's depending on the outcome of his projects to then say to us, okay, Oli didn't like what I was doing and whatever, but this is why I was doing it. Yeah.
I'll let you weigh in, George. On this.
I agreed. Good points, both from Doc and Larry. I would take it from this viewpoint as going into an election. The incumbent always has, not always, but very often will have a strong position, right? Unless you were totally disastrous. And I think that will again be the case. And he's made the argument to sort of galvanize his presidency with his marquee project, the Home of Football, which is excellent. I mean, the idea to set it up, I mean, it's not something that's novel. It's probably novel to us, but this is how big federations and serious people in football operate. One of the criticisms that would stick to all previous administration is that after being in existence for over 100 years, I mean, you don't have a galvanized shed to say you keep a meeting there. And I think that was an indictment to everybody who passed. Going forward, we wouldn't be able to say that. You actually would have something that something to show, something tangible. And I think that will always be to his credit. Having said so, I don't think that one item or doing something that is good would be able to, cover over the real purpose of running football, which is to be able to set up proper structures for the development of football. The players, and when I mean structures, and I don't mean physical structures, but systems. We look at, Doc mentioned, even the very committees that were established when he started are now non-existent. We don't have a technical director. We don't have all of these committees that's supposed to be really overseeing football. And I think to add to your point, probably that is why at some point during his tenure, he had to be a little more hands-on because there wasn't the persons there really to do those functions that are so very important. So, I mean, the home of football and stuff will be to his credit. Obviously, one thing that is public knowledge is our performance on the field, which again is a direct result of the leadership, and that has gone from bad to worse at this point. And again, as I would give him credit for the home of football, he also has to take responsibility for the state of local football. And I think I never like to see it as something that cannot be reversed, because even he himself, I know, would be looking at things that he did and have a view to probably correct those if he has a second term. In terms of some things that would be lacking, I think, in a setup, you touched on it as well, and it doesn't have to be a secretary, but at a board level, you need strong persons, somebody who would not be somebody to just shake your head and go along, right? But somebody who would, for the good of football and even for the good of their own president, would be able to sometimes give that positive resistance to make sure that, the wheels don't fall off. And I don't think, again, I'm speaking as an outsider looking in, I don't think that existed, right? A second thing that I thought he would have been to his benefit to have is somebody to do his PR, right? And I think publicly there are a lot of things that wasn't received well by the public, right? This home of football, although it's the main thing that he spoke about, yet still there were a lot of things that were clouded in a bit of secrecy. And anytime the public don't have enough information, people speculate, right? And that's just a fact of us being human. And when they speculate, it's not always going to be positive. So, for me, I think I was one as well who was in support of his presidency. I look forward to see the things that he would bring to bear on the local game. Some of them, I think he achieved. Some of them he did not.
You guys are such a smart panel. I learned so much in this little short space of time here. But you guys were right. Obviously, he has a lot of strengths, but his weakness, according to the assessment, is his autocratic style and all the divisions under him just disappear, based on what I'm hearing you say. Let's talk a little bit about Wallace. I know you guys mightn't know as much because you didn't see him perform, but he's with the secondary schools and they're not doing too bad and so on. So based on whatever knowledge you have, let's get an idea of what Wallace would be like as a president.
Well, I was lucky to get to know Mr. Wallace. And I'm saying lucky because he's now become somebody that I admire in football. I was lucky enough when he became manager of the Trinidad and Tobago football team. And at that time, I would always been close to the Trinidad and Tobago football team. But at that time, Stephen Hart and I were very close. And then Wallace became his manager. And so I should say his trusted manager. And Wallace did an excellent job as the manager. And what I saw, I traveled with them to a couple of countries, down to Peru and to Uruguay. And his interaction with the players, well, both Hart and himself, was something to be lauded, because I've traveled with many managers throughout the years. And he is one of the things I could say about him. He's a stern man, a hard man, but he's very fair. And he would always listen to people. And he doesn't dictate to you immediately what should be done and what not without giving you a hearing. He's a fair man, he's a man of integrity, and he is somebody who I could have easily seen into further leadership position. So it wasn't surprising to me that he became head of the SSFL. And what is a kudo for him in the SSFL, and something that he'll have to be a brave man wanting to take this presidency on, is because he has been able to garner so much sponsorship for the SSFL in the period of time that he's been on. Yes, others have had some sponsorship, but it seems to have blossomed in the last few years under his stewardship. And anybody going in to the Ttfa presidency has to think of that elephant in the room, that millstone around your neck, that debt, that financial burden that keeps preventing you from going through and carrying out your programs. And Wallace is a brave man, because he wants to go and do that and take that up. He's been able to garner sponsorship around him, and he's been able to put around him people who seem to have been able to have sponsorship coming in the background. It's for us to wait and see the plans that they have and how they unfold.
Well, Larry and Jeff, hold on. I need to take a break. I will come back with you when we get back. Viewers, we'll be right back after the short break.
I'm going to say right away, until I hear what each slate has to offer, I am not going to give my pick.
With the limited knowledge that you have,
And the limited time we have.
and the limited time that
We, from those encounters together, and this was a North-South game to open the season.
So the team might be playing well, as we always say with Trinidad and Tobago.
Futsal did a great for me.
Okay, hey everybody. Welcome to another edition of Field of Dreams on ACTN. My name is Steve David. I'm your host. Okay, welcome back, viewers. Okay, Larry and Jefferson, I give you guys a chance to weigh in on.
Well, I have no personal interaction with Mr. Wallace. All I know about him is what I've read and what I've seen in terms of his tenure, as the doc says, as the head of the SSFL. And quite rightly, for somebody on the outside looking in, under his stewardship, obviously the SSFL has taken off, mostly in terms of their branding, because of the fact that he's been able to garner so much support, inclusive of television, which in terms of the time we live in is so crucial and critical for both the players and for the viewing public. And there seems to be, to me, that there seems to be sponsors falling over themselves to want to get their names into the SSFL. which would suggest that Mr. Wallace and his group is selling the product very successfully. So I think with that momentum, maybe, and I'm only speculating here, he has been encouraged to go for the top hat or the big hat in terms of running for the presidency of the Ttfa. So he does come, at least at this stage, with some really good credentials in terms of his accomplishments. So one would think that he has a good fighting chance because of how the delegates are also split. His group, it looks as if he would have some quiet confidence that he stands a really good chance of winning the presidency.
Deficit?
Yeah, I think it's encouraging. I am very encouraged to see somebody like Mr. Wallace who is willing to go up for this quite a task, right? To lead the Ttfa. I myself had the privilege of working with him personally when he just got into managing football with the senior team. And at that point, he was new to football, coming from cricket, where he was quite successful running cricket at a national level. And what really struck me about him is his humility, his willingness to get on board with football. Although he didn't have a hands-on, he knew about managing and administrating sport, which in itself is particularly the same line, but he wanted to get into football. And I mean, based on how he went about doing that, it was always very inclusive. He would talk to everybody to get a consensus. Nobody knows what is in a man's heart, but he also seemed very very upright, very straight up. What he told you, he would deliver on that. And he even came to me in the earlies, I mean, coming from cricket and giving me his background and so on, and trying to find out what I thought would work in a particular situation. Again, coming to football at that time, where resources are always kind of in short supply, and he was up for the challenge. I think the fact that there are so many persons in football who have history in football, who have stature in local football, who are willing to work with him, I think that speaks to his credit.
I think he has great mannerisms to be a president, and so mild-mannered and stuff. I like that. And you know what I like about Wallace as well? His slate. I think he has a stronger slate than David John Williams. And we see what happens. One more person we need to talk about. Ferguson, I have no idea who he is. I've never seen him. I don't think. I don't even remember seeing him on TV. So you guys got to educate me here.
Well, we have to talk about this first because I only met Mr. Ferguson very recently when he agreed to sponsor the Ascension League.
Right.
And I had heard his name being bandied about when Rangers was acquired by the group from the Maloney area, and Terminex was becoming their sponsor and whatnot. But I had not met him personally. Right. I didn't know him in football. And now the Constitution, and I think he has satisfied this, and I've heard him say so, and I have no reason to disbelieve him. The Constitution states that you must in order to go up for presidency or a major position, you must be in the administration of football for at least 3 years. Now, recently, many people have only become familiar with Mr. Ferguson's name, but he made it clear to us that he has been with the Maloney team even before the Rangers team for several years. And actually their planning of the project that he is now famous for with the Rangers team up in Maloney has been a process that's been going on for the last several years, the planning and eventually bringing it to fruition. One of the things that we could say about him is that he has done something that many people have been trying to do in football for umpteen years, have their team with a home, a place to play, a field to play on, and being able to have gates that are substantial and meaningful, because that hasn't happened often in football. The only time I remember that happening in recent years is when everybody played at in Long Circular St. James. I'll say this, when you have deep pockets, that can happen. But my fear, I have one fear with Mr. Ferguson, only one fear, is that sometimes we in football and in other sports, we bend backwards too much to the people who with the deep pockets. And one of the things that happened in the Ascension League, and it was a preseason league, and I was wary of it a little bit, but I said, all right, it was a chance for them to make back their money, and they're sponsoring the league, etc. Was that all the home games for Rangers were there. But when you're in football, the traditions are important as well. And football should be a home and away process for teams playing football. And I am hoping that what I've heard recently, and I'm waiting to see, that all his home games in the top tier in Trinidad and Tobago are supposed to be at the Rangers field in Maloney. I'm hoping that better heads prevail and that we stick with our traditional process of playing games home and away.
You heard of the golden rule? Who has the gold rule? So let's hear you.
I know nothing of Mr. Ferguson until the Ascension League came in, and of course his name was prominent because he sponsored that league. And I think his name took on a lot more prominence because of the state of the local game at that time. So that shot him into the limelight, right? Because we all know the financial strain that local football has been undergoing for a short while now. Well, not a short while, for a while. So Mr. Ferguson coming on the scene with apparently deep pockets and able to provide the resources, both financially and materially, in terms of the stadium he built there and other stuff, was like a fillip and a fresh breath of air for mostly the players, I would say, because they have been playing under duress for a short while, including the Pro League and the Super League to some extent. So he breathed a fresh lease of life into the local game just when it appeared as if the game was going to just disappear. So some people will see him as the right fit for local football, the state we're in here now. But I am one for history. I believe history has a great part to play in organization, especially in sport. I am not aware of Mr. Ferguson having a long history in the sport. So I'm a little wary of him putting somebody like him to run local football. I believe people should have a history in the area in which they're trying to get themselves involved in, because it's a huge task.
Are you afraid he might pick up his ball and go home?
Yeah. It's a good analogy, though, because we do know, as you said, usually people who have deep pockets tend to believe that they should have the final say. And all I can do is speculate here. I'm just saying that there may be some gray areas in that respect, because we have presently some issues with how John Williams runs his business in terms of, it's my way, it appears to be that way, my way or the highway, although he has dispelled that publicly, but it does appear, so the perception is that. And my fear is that that can become a reality for somebody like Mr. Ferguson with his deep pockets deciding, well, look, this is the way I want to go, So it's my way, or not necessarily highway, it's my way or no deep pockets. So that's a fear that I can have. He would have to say to me publicly, Larry, you don't have to fear that from me. I will do X, Y, and Z and have to record him so that I could play it back to him if he decides to do otherwise. But I believe in history, and I would love to know somebody who wants to take over top position in Trinidad football. Football should have a history in the local game.
Yeah, well, again, with the limited information that we all seem to have concerning Mr. Ferguson, my view would be, again, I'm encouraged that people are willing to take on this task, and he's one who I think we can probably assume why, because he would have the ability to probably wave away some of these long-standing debts. But with the, again, along with the other members of the panel, having a limited time, at least in the public view, we have a little bit to go on. And football, especially something as demanding as this, you would want to have some sort of history to look back on, as Larry is saying. We do have some history, quite recent, and which means picking up his ball is, we wouldn't know if that would be an outcome once things don't go his way. The idea of him being able to do it and owning a club, I think it's possible. But again, I think our local game still lacks some of those strong characters who would probably be deterrents for somebody like that running an association where, fairness and sort of impartial thing would be important. And looking forward, it's exciting. I think this election, twists and turns may still be on the way, and looking forward to see who's going to be charged with taking Trinidad and Tobago football forward.
I would have liked to have seen Mr. Ferguson on a slate,
Right.
but not as the president. I think he will be very useful.
Bring value, yes.
To Trinidad and Tobago football. And he wouldn't be part of that learning curve that is necessary to get in tune with all the facets of Trinidad and Tobago football. Let me tell you, I've been there for 40 years in Trinidad and Tobago football, and I still learn every day.
Yeah.
So it's not easy to know all the facets.
I wouldn't let you guys get out of here without asking a prediction, man. Who do you think is going to win? And I'll tell you what I would do. I wouldn't even let you call names. It's 1, 2, or 3. If the viewers wasn't keeping, if they wasn't keeping track of that order, I want to know 1, 2, or 3. Who you pick, or who you think is going to take this race? Let's. Should we start with you, or should we start with you?
I'm going to say right away, until I hear what each slate has to offer, I am not going to give my pick.
With the limited knowledge that you have.
And the limited time we have.
And the limited time that we have, because we have 1 minute, give me a number, 1, 2, or 3.
From what I'm seeing right now, if I had to get a poll, the poll is showing me that the United Group is ahead in the poll at the present.
Numbers 2. All right. 2. Larry?
Based on the breakdown of delegates, it would appear as if the United Group seems to have quite a lot of the votes covered.
2.
So, yeah.
Jefferson?
All right. Who I want and who I think may be different. So
Give me a number.
I think I'd go with the incumbent for now.
2?
The incumbent, number
What-
one.
One.
Oh, 1?
I think, yeah.
Okay. So, viewers, we have 3 guys, 2, and 1 guy, 1. All right.
Was yours?
You could veto the vote.
If we have 3 guys, number 2, and 1 is 1, come and do the math,
Three and two.
Jefferson.
I thought they said 2.
No, I think 2. I think 2 is going to take it. And so, anyhow, thank you guys for being here. Thank you for all the insight. I appreciate you guys so much. Thank you. ACTN, thanks for giving us the opportunity. And viewers, thank you for tuning in. Don't forget, we also come on Tuesday at 1 o'clock if you missed the Monday night show at 8. We have a Facebook page. You can check us out. And we have an email address, fieldofdreamspt@gmail.com. You can drop us a line. The show is ended. Go in peace. Keep David. Good night.